Yes, well, today we're asking what effect lockdown and isolation may be having on people's likelihood of being radicalised, especially online. And we are joined by Dr. Rakib Ehsan, and an expert in terrorism. Yes, well, today we're asking what effect lockdown and isolation may be. Yes, well, today we're asking what effect lockdown and isolation may be having on people's likelihood of being radicalised, especially online. And we are joined by Dr. Rakib Ehsan, and an expert in terrorism, radicalisation, research fellow, of course, at the Henry Jackson Society of Foreign Policy and National Security think tank. Thank you very much, Rakib, for joining us. Look, I mean, it is a massive concern, isn't it? If you lock people away with only their laptops or computers for company, it could be quite easy for them to become radicalised, couldn't it?
Oh, no, absolutely. I think that was always the risk with lockdowns, that you'd have those increased periods of boredom under social isolation. And then people would, there's a potential there that young people who may have been socially isolated even before the pandemic, with that situation intensifying, that they could potentially enter dark territories on the internet. And I think that's a real problem from a counter-terrorism perspective. Because if you have people who are becoming radicalised on the online space through digital extremist communities, loosely organised hubs online of individuals, that could be a very serious problem from a counter-terrorism perspective, because it's more difficult to monitor that when compared to when people are involved with, you could say, real-life terrorist organisations, which are more structured, which helps that bit more from a monitoring perspective.
Yeah, and has there been any evidence or any research conducted that you know of so far about what has been happening to radicalisation and to extremism during this period of lockdown? Well, and during the pandemic, Mercy, I should say, more broadly.
Sure. So, Mercy, we know that a number of European security services, we saw a recent terrorist attack in Kongsberg in Norway, and the security services there said that they were very concerned by the threat of online radicalisation, and that this would potentially intensify the risk of low-tech, lone wolf terrorist attacks, and they are very difficult to predict, and they're also they are very difficult to protect against, because these attacks can be carried out in a relatively short period of time with very little logistical preparation required. So I think that moving forwards, if we are going down this policy, that if we were to have another pandemic, hopefully that isn't the case, that we have to really see what are the risks associated with lockdown. And we also have to see that when public authorities are working with young people who are radicalisation risks, how effective can that work be done on a virtual basis when compared to interacting with them through face-to-face communication? So for those who work in counter-extremism and counter-terrorism, there's a lot to think about in terms of the potential drawbacks of lockdowns when it comes to providing public safety.
What are some of the key triggers that lead people towards radicalisation? Is it general dissatisfaction with this country? What is it?
Well, Patrick, it could be all sorts of things, a myriad of social, political and cultural factors that can feed into radicalisation processes. Social isolation is one, when you're looking at the threat of online radicalisation, but that there has to be an understanding from a social cohesion perspective, that if you have almost counter societies developing within Western societies such as ours, that you see the development of radical ideologies which may be fundamentally anti-British in nature. If you have a lack of social cohesion, people interacting and not having the opportunity to build positive ties with those of a different ethnic or religious background, then that is fertile ground for extremists to peddle divisive narratives.
Yes, indeed. Well, Dr. Rakib, thanks for joining us again. It's always a pleasure to have you to discuss that very important issue.